If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedmann.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is a book coach and best-selling author. Michelle Vandepas is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs who want to share their message with the world by becoming an author. A successful business consultant, she started 3 multi-million-dollar companies, produced a documentary, and has been an advisor to top-level business leaders, politicians, and already visible coaches and authors. She's a visionary marketer who combines creativity with smart business sense to unleash the power hidden inside her clients. Michelle's been featured in numerous media outlets. She's also a TEDx speaker and TEDx speaker coach. Wow. Michelle, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to the show.
Oh, wow.
And thank you.
Thank you, Susan. What an intro.
Well, thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor. Well, you're very accomplished. We've got to get all these different things in. Absolutely. I mean, you know about visibility and what it takes to build a platform with marketing. And as you know, this podcast is focused primarily for nonfiction authors, although we have many fiction authors as well who listen. You know as well as I that to start a strong foundation for your book, you need a really good book launch. So from your experience, what are some of the important things that our listeners should keep in mind when developing their book launch?
Yeah, well, it's such a great question. You know, I like to think about a book as a project that's a part of your business. We're talking nonfiction books mostly for entrepreneurs, healers, coaches, service professionals, people who feel like they have a message to share, a mission in the world, a purpose, and the book is helpful in getting out their message and hopefully also building their business. If we take that group of people, and of course, even if you don't fall into that group, hopefully this will still help. But for a minute, let's just take that group of people. Then you think about your book as another way to build your business, and you need to think about your book as a business, as a project inside your business. And so you need strategy, you need a plan, you need to cut bait quickly when something's not working and focus on what is working and get the emotion out of it, right? Because our books are our babies. And when we put it out there and nobody buys, we like shrink from the world and we think, oh no, you know, our work sucks. And actually all it means is the people didn't see that message in that moment in time. And so when we think about it as a business, or at least as a project, and we can start taking some of the emotion out, we'll make much more rational decisions about how to build the platform and how to launch. And the way that I really like to work with people, regardless of what you're doing now to make your living or if you're in business, is to start with what really sounds fun, and let's build on that. If you like to podcast, let's get you podcasting or get you a guest on podcasts and maybe YouTube and maybe radio shows, virtual events. If blogging sounds fun because you're a writer at heart and you want to write more, let's focus there. Whatever you do for your book launch needs to be part of the strategy that comes from how do you get your message out? What sounds fun and passionate to you rather than drudgery? And then how can we leverage that to get you more eyeballs on your book when it launches? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I absolutely love it. And you and I are singing out of the same hymn book, so to speak. You're absolutely right. But one thing you said earlier about the emotion it's really, really tough to take the emotion out because you're right. Our book is our baby. And if it doesn't sell, you think, does it suck? And it doesn't. And it doesn't mean it sucks. It just means that the strategy, as you said, wasn't necessarily in place, or you're not doing what you enjoy doing. I love the idea of putting fun into it and doing what you love to do. I love to do podcasting. Other people love being on camera. I hesitate with that, although now doing so much Zooming, I've seen myself enough on camera. I'm like, okay, don't look that bad. I feel more comfortable.
Yeah, so if I can continue down that path.
Absolutely.
I like to start with what's fun and start there. But then I want to ping off your thing about Zoom. Then you also have to learn some new skills. So let's take a totally different analogy. Let's say you decide that you've walked 3 miles every day for a year and you decide you want to run a marathon. Okay, that's awesome. You start with running 3 miles a day, right? You turn the walking into running and then maybe 5 miles, whatever it is. But you also have to learn some other skills, like what happens if you pull a hamstring, or what kind of shoes should you buy that may be outside of the skill set, and even something that you may not really want to learn, but you have to be successful. The same thing with book launching. We start with what you know and love. We start with what sounds really fun to learn. And then we have to add usually 2 or 3 things that may not be so much fun, but will be critical to having a successful launch. I get people all the time, and I'm sure you do too. I don't want anything to do with social media, or I'm never going to do any marketing, or I got this book, I want someone else to handle it and go sell it for me. And usually we can find something that's going to be really fun for the author to do to market, maybe write articles or do podcasting like we talked about. Maybe it's a Facebook group. And then we need to add 1 or 2 other things to flush that out, to make it sustainable, to make it meaty enough so that we're not just hanging our book on one slim marketing strategy, right? We start with the core and then we build it out. And I like to say it's called stretching. It's called pushing your own limits, pushing your own boundaries. And just like you mentioned with Zoom, you may start thinking, I don't really want to do this, but then you get better at it, you grow into it, and then you're ready to push the next boundary as well.
And that's so true, because many people say to me, and like you've said, I don't want to do any marketing. I don't like this thing called marketing. And they equate sales and marketing under the same umbrella. And then they want somebody else to market or sell the book for them. And I say the best person to sell your stuff is you. Mm-hmm. Because going back to that emotion, you have the passion behind that book. And it's only you who really has that passion. It's really tough for somebody else to sort of duplicate the passion that you have for your baby. Michelle, let's move on and look at some more best practices in order to leverage that book. What are some best practices that you can recommend?
I always start with who. I'm even going to back up from the who. I'm going to start with the what. We got to make sure that you're writing a book that's really what you can stick your stake in the sand about. What do you know? So if you haven't even written your book, what is it that you really know and love and can talk to anybody about all day, every day? Stick to that. Stick to what it is that you really are an expert about. And then look at who needs to read that. Who are you reaching out to? And make sure there's a match there. And you write it in such a way that your potential audience wants to hear what you have to say. If I decide I want to lose 20 pounds, last thing I want is someone lecturing me about what to eat and give up sugar and go gluten-free and give up coffee and give up alcohol. Good grief, I know all of that. If I was willing to do it, I would have done it already. What I want is someone to speak to me about the benefit of losing weight. And that has to go in the book as well. What's going to be the benefit to the reader? What does the reader get out of it? To start with best practices, you have to start with making sure that you're writing a book that readers want to read. That's the first thing. If you write a book that's your life story because you've always wanted to write it and you think it's a great legacy and something to give to your kids, that's beautiful. And that book deserves to be written. And I encourage everybody to write any book that's in their heart to write. But if you're in this for business and you want to build a business around your book or build your business using your book as another tool, then you have to make sure that it's well received. So that's the first best practice. I can go on and on to the next one if you like.
I'm going to have you give us a few more, but that whole idea of the book being a tool in your business, either building a business around the book, or in fact, if you've already got a business, how to use that book so that obviously you can leverage for more, let's say, revenue generating ideas, opportunities. It plays a purpose in what you do. I mean, one of the questions I always ask my authors is, what do you see your book doing for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's really important, that they know and understand, and that it's realistic, because I'm sure you have had this where authors think that they're going to make a lot of money out of their book because it's going to become an international bestseller overnight, and people are going to flood to purchase this. And you know as well as I, that isn't necessarily reality. It might happen once in a blue moon, but at the moment, let's stick to reality. So let's hear some more best practices, Michelle.
Yeah, so one is to do some math around your book. Many people charge book coaching, book publishing, right? There's you and I out there in the world and all different ways and models to get your book out. So you got to do a little bit of math here. Look at your royalties. And even if you sell 10,000 books, how much money realistically are you going to make? And is it going to replace your income? Generally not. One thing I always recommend is look at how this is going to leverage your business, either bring you more credibility or help you get clients or help you build some new revenue stream. And an example I give is I was looking to hire a PR firm last year, and I talked with the owner over the phone. And the next thing I knew, a week later, I got her book in the mail. And it was all about how to hire a PR firm, why you should hire one, and why I'm different than anybody else. It was basically her long form sales letter. And for her, that worked perfectly, and I did hire her. I'm not suggesting every book should be like that, but if you're clear, the question you asked, what do you expect your book to do for you? Then you can, she was very clear, this book is going to be like my business card. It's going to be my long form sales love letter to my potential clients. And when I read it, I was impressed, and I saw exactly how she stood apart in the marketplace. So I think your question is a really good best practice. What do you expect your book to do for you? And then the next thing is, how are all the ways that you could make money from this book? If you are a coach and you sell a $3,000 coaching package, you may only need to sell 5 books to make this more than worthwhile financially, if those 5 people buy a coaching package. There's lots of ways to look at your book and get real creative about how it's going to serve you, your business, your practice, whatever, in building your platform, building your credibility. Another thing a book will do is it will get you speaking gigs. It will get you on virtual summits. It will get you podcast interviews. It will do all kinds of other things that are peripheral that will help you just have credibility in the marketplace.
Yeah, get seen, heard, and as you said, have that credibility in the marketplace. Talking about speaking, Michelle, you're a TEDx speaker and you also coach authors in TEDx. Being a TEDx speaker, I'm interested to know, how did that affect your business being a speaker at a TEDx summit?
Such a great question, because I expected one thing, and like I expected to be on TEDx and then the phone would ring, right? It's like a first-time author. You expect you're going to publish your book and then the phone rings. And it didn't quite happen like that. It built over time to give me some visibility. And now people either like the talk or they don't like the talk, but that's not important. I have some nice views, enough views that it gives me credibility now. Enough people have watched it. And it's like the holy trinity of having a podcast, a book, and a TEDx talk. It gives you instant credibility, right? It makes you an expert just in general, even if you've never watched the talk that I did. And so it helped me in other ways, the same way that a book will help any business or anyone. It just gives you instant credibility. People figure you must know what you're talking about, even if they've never actually watched my TEDx, and they're more inclined to hire me as a coach or as their publishing guide or as a speaker or to come onto a summit because I've had the TED Talk. And it was a lot of fun to do and a huge growing experience. So we have that whole other personal aspect of how much it pushed me to grow personally doing it.
I had to laugh. That is so funny. The Holy Trinity, the book, the talk, and the TEDx speech. Yeah. Let me ask you, what is the process with regard to even getting chosen to be a TEDx speaker?
Yeah, it's different now than it was when I did it, like so old school about 7 years ago. It's changed a lot, just like book publishing's changed a lot in 7 years. And now, these days, you need to have, as always, an idea worth sharing, something a little different, a hook for the writers out there in this audience, because not every author's really a writer, right? But for the writers who really enjoy writing, you got to find that hook. So go find that headline or something that's a different twist on what you would normally talk about. And that's what TEDx is looking for, something a little bit different. And then you apply. Different TEDx places open their application process at different times throughout the country. And you apply. Sometimes you have to submit a video. Sometimes you just submit a synopsis of what your hook is and one paragraph about what you're going to bring to your speech. Every TEDx is slightly different. You go through the process. You may have an online audition. You may have to show up in person to audition. You may just send your whole written speech out. Everyone is a little bit different, but it's a whole audition process. And then hopefully when you get chosen, you get assigned a coach. You'll have some rehearsal time. The coach and the team will help polish your speech until the final day when you're actually up on stage giving it.
I can imagine that's got to be pretty nerve-wracking.
Well, I curled up in a ball the night before and I was all set to call and just tell them I was sick. I wasn't going to do it. It's like writing a book or running that marathon or anything that you have second doubts about at the last minute and just think you're not good enough. And luckily I had some family that pushed me through and just told me to go do it. Even if I sucked, it wouldn't matter. Then nobody would watch and it wouldn't make a difference, right? And so I literally was curled up in a ball, and I did not get coaching and all of that because this is a long time ago. And so I hadn't had any rehearsal time. I hadn't had any coaching. And I got up there and gave my speech. And then as soon as it was done, I'm like, well, that wasn't so bad, right? As soon as you break through your own barriers, you've grown into the next one. And writing a book is such the same process. You have to push through your own barriers of getting it written. And then, oh my gosh, I'm going to actually publish it. What if someone reads it? I want it to be a bestseller, but what if someone actually reads it, right? We get all these things going on in our head, and we have to push through our own barriers, and we grow so much in that process if we allow ourselves to do so. Writing a book, doing a TEDx, being on stage, having a podcast, being an entrepreneur, these are all intensely spiritual journeys of going within and growing.
Very much so. It's like perfect what you were saying. I mean, that head trash can really get in your way, but being able to push through those barriers, like you said, the different fears, the different levels. And then I love it when you said, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. Yeah, you sort of have that realization after the fact. Before that, you're throwing up, you have sleepless nights,
Totally.
You can barely do anything, you're stressed out. And then, oh, that was easy.
You've moved into that space now.
Yes, I love it. Move into the space.
Yeah.
That's great. How about mistakes that you find that authors make, Michelle?
So 3 big ones. I'm sure you probably find the same things. Not having a great book cover, being married to some design that they think is great and not getting outside feedback or professional help with a book cover. Book covers help make or break a book. And I like to test 2 or 3 or 4 book covers, put them out to sample audiences, ask for and listen for feedback. The next one is not having the right balance between editing and publishing. Some people get stuck in the editing process and never get out of it. Other people are not wanting to spend money on professional editing. Editing, I find, is something that's a balance. You've got to have a book professionally edited, and then you have to say at some point, okay, it's done. And not beat yourself up if a period got missed or you wish you would have rewritten that sentence, because that's always true. I wish I could, at times go back and redo my TED Talk, right? There's always going to be things to fix. So it's that balance of too much editing, not enough editing. And then the third mistake that many authors don't even know they make is not understanding the ISBN piece and whether they need one, who owns it, if they've hired someone else to help them through publishing. Are you using their bank of ISBNs? Are you getting your own? Who has control over the book and so forth?
Yeah, those are really important points. And I love the first one in particular about the book cover, that can make or break the book. And one of the things that I always tell authors is do not put your picture on the front of the book, because unless you're a Michelle Obama, somebody famous, don't bother. People don't know who you are, or a very minute group of people know who you are. You need something that's really going to hit people in the face, and you've got to love it like 1,000%. I had a speaker colleague who just didn't have a cover that she was totally in love with, and she felt that it really affected the sales of her book because she was embarrassed to push it because she didn't like the look of it. These things happen. It's like that subconscious working. Michelle, I know that our listeners would like to know more about you, your services. What can you share with our listeners?
Thank you. I am a book coach. I'm also a publishing consultant. I'm also part owner of a publishing company. So I can help anywhere you are along the journey. And you can find me at gracepointpublishing.com, where I have a download. Anybody, mistakes and things to watch out for, explains basic ISBNs and editing and so forth. So anyone is welcome to go get that download, and hopefully there's some really great tips in there for everybody.
Yes, and I know you write really good tips because I've checked out some of your books on Amazon, and you're a real tip person, which I love because I love writing tips. Forget the stories, but I love the tips. And people like both too. Michelle, if you were to leave our listeners with a golden nugget, that's one thing that they can take away from this interview, what would that be?
Not everybody should write a book, but if you have that inkling that I think I'd like to write a book, maybe someday I'll write a book's always been on my bucket list, then write the book. You don't have to necessarily hone your writing skills. You don't have to worry about how good your writing is. There are 2 types of authors: those who write, who love to write, who hone their writing skills, who become better writers. And then there's other authors who put out 1, 2, or 3 books and do it for marketing or do it because they have a message to share, slightly different reason. If you fall in that second category, you can work with an editor to put out a perfectly fine, well-balanced, consistent book that will be well received, will be a good book. And I've read books by really famous people that are not that well written. So if you have a book in your heart, write the book and don't let your self-doubt hold you back. There are professionals to help you every step of the way. And believe me, the professionals are not here to put red X's through your work like they did in grammar school. All of us, Susan, myself, everybody are here to help and guide you and to polish your work to make it better so it's something you can be really proud of.
Yes, I always say, if the author succeeds, I succeed. And that's what I want. I want them to be successful. And I know you do too, because that's the business that we're in. So it's wonderful. So, Michelle, you've been a great guest. You've shared some wonderful points and different perspectives, and the stories and the metaphors, analogies that you used were brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And thank you all for taking time out of your precious day to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much book marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.